Good morning. Today we are going to finish up chapter 13 with section 4. We skipped section 3. I don't know if you looked through it, but the material in section 3 is a little too dated with how old our book is, so we went ahead and skipped that. All right, so let's finish up. You only have 3 questions on Friday, so this won't take too long. The most important thing that we can look at if we're really measuring how well an economy is doing is by looking at their real GDP per capita. So if you remember, real GDP means we're taking inflation into account. Per capita means per person. So when we look at real GDP per capita, we're looking at the dollar amount adjusted for inflation of the number of goods or the amount of goods that are produced per person. It is the most important measurement of long-term growth for an economy. Why? Inflation, we need to know that a large number of goods were produced per person, not just that a small number of goods that were very expensive were produced for per person. So taking inflation into account is very important. The second thing we need to look at is population. The activity you're going to do today, you'll see that a company can or a country can produce a large number of goods valued at a very large amount. But if you take their population into account, they really didn't produce that many goods per person. So the reason this is so important of a measurement is it truly gives a good idea on the standard of living for a particular country. The standard of living, that's what we're looking for. That's what is so important. How much do these goods cost? That's what we get. And then also how many per person or how much per person was produced. If you remember the idea behind GDP, when we look at that amount, we can say that's the amount that was produced per person because businesses will only make what people are buying. So that's why it's so important. It's the idea of standard of living. Why is economic growth so important? We have a few things we need to look at. The first thing, economic growth raises the standard of living. The more that we can, jobs we can create, the more employment that we have. We have a larger number of people making money and that can afford to be able to buy houses and the necessities of life. Another reason for growth, we need to enlarge our tax base. The government's money that they spend in our economy is money that's collected through taxes. So if more people have jobs, then the government has more people to collect tax money from, and then they have more money to turn around and spend in programs that are important to citizens, whether or not it's education or healthcare or welfare. It enlarges the tax base. Another reason for economic growth is it helps solve domestic problems. If people don't have jobs, then we can connect the idea that they also are probably having issues acquiring healthcare, being able to pay for food. So if we continue to grow and we continue to produce jobs, we will solve domestic problems that emerge. Other reasons that we need to continue growing is to help other nations. If we have a growing, robust economy, we have citizens who make demands on goods from other countries, and that creates jobs in other countries. When jobs are created in another country and now you have more people with access to more money, they can turn around and then demand goods from our country. So both the United States and other countries benefit when there's economic growth in the United States. Another reason that it's important for us to grow economically is the fact that we are a global role model. Developing economies throughout the world look at countries who have the most successful economies and tend to model themselves after those particular countries. So to grow more market economies that allows us to trade, we can serve as the political and economic model for those countries. So economic growth is very important. The last thing that you looked at in this chapter is how do we grow economically? What factors influence economic growth? And this brings us back to chapter 1 with the factors of production, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. The amount of those factors of production matters, but also the quality matters. land, our natural resources. The United States is fortunate enough to be fairly self-sustainable, and that we have the natural resources we need in abundance to be able to produce quality goods. Labor, there is a heavy emphasis in the United States on education. So we produce labor that is very skilled because we offer the ability for labor to add to their skill set. Another major factor influencing economic growth is capital, machinery used to make more, and money invested to make more. So our economy over time, the capital to labor ratio is going up, meaning that the amount of machinery that is used by our labor is going up, which tends to produce higher quality goods at a lower price. It doesn't necessarily eliminate jobs, as we need more and more labor to come up with these new machineries, and then once they exist, to service the machinery and update the machinery. The last thing is entrepreneurship. We need our government to encourage entrepreneurship. That's part of the reason, if you remember, in last unit, we looked at patents and copyrights and trademarks, those things that encourage entrepreneurship and allow the business that came up with this idea to be able to reap the rewards of their invention and all the money that they have tied up in innovation. So by encouraging entrepreneurship, we encourage our economy to grow by adding new types of products, new methods of producing that in the long run are good for our economy. Overall, just to sum things up, with our factors of production and economic growth, we want to be the most efficient that we can as we produce. This goes back to Unit 1 and Unit 2, and to some extent Unit 3, that the idea is the more productive we can be, the better off we are. Especially for the consumer, we want businesses to be efficient and productive because their efficiency and productivity leads to high quality products at a lower price. So that kind of sums up our chapter 13. Today you're going to work on an activity where you can see the application of these ideas in the global economy. So if you have any questions on this, please reach out to me. Have a good day.